The golden rule of masculinity nowadays is don't do anything to piss off a woman. Whenever women are around where we're gauging what we say, okay, was that a little too off color? Is that going to get a frown? Is that going to get, a rebuke? Honestly, the more time we spend with women, groups of women or a particular woman, the less attractive they find us. I don't know if it's the familiarity. I've been saying something for a while that seems to resonate whenever I say it. It's really simple. The feminine is highly attracted to a man who's comfortable in his own skin, knows where he's going, and looks like he's having a good time getting there.
What do men need to know about attracting women?
About attracting women. It depends on what men we're talking about. Talking about front row dads?
Yeah, let's talk front row dads.
Because they want to attract women.
Yeah. Their wives, their spouses, of course, not judging. There might be people that want to attract other women as well.
All right. No judgment involved. I've been saying something for a while that seems to resonate whenever I say it. It's really simple, and that is the feminine. I'm going to speak of the feminine in highly energetic terms, like yin and yang feminine. That the feminine is highly attracted to a man who's comfortable in his own skin, knows where he's going, and looks like he's having a good time getting there. So if a man, wherever he's at in life, wants to attract the feminine, women, dogs, cats, babies, money, adventure, opportunity, work at getting comfortable in your own skin. Liking you, taking good care of you, working on getting rid of your shame, anything that says I'm not good enough, those voices. Get comfortable in your own skin. Figure out where you're going. Figure out why you're here, what you want to be doing, where your sweet spots are, what really turns you on and excites you. And in that process, you'll look like you're having a good time. And the feminine is just highly attracted to it. Whenever I say that to female dating coaches, they go, kind of like, yeah, that's the man that they want to connect with.
Yeah.
So we can break all that down.
Years ago, I remember I was at a concert with my buddy, John Kane, and he said to me something very similar. He said, just be the guy that's there to enjoy the show. And,
perfect.
And it was the perfect
Can
advice.
you expand that to life?
Yeah.
Just be the guy that's here to enjoy this experience of
exactly.
A few short years on this planet.
Yeah. When men try to do that, when they try to be comfortable in their skin, when they try to be the guy at the show, just having a good time, where do they get hung up? Why is that so difficult for people to just take from concept to implementation?
The first thought that comes to mind is thinking too much. Kind of like the sound man was getting us to do fake laughs just to check the sound. And you can't do a fake laugh, just like you can't do a fake smile. And I don't know that you can fake having fun. And I think, based on most of the men I work with, I think our biggest enemy is our thinker. It's just how we think about self, how we think about the world. And so if you're going to go have a good time at a concert, have a good time doing an interview, have a good time, standing in a TSA line at the airport to go somewhere else you want to go, it's usually how we get to thinking about things that gets in the way. Our impatience, why is this happening to me? This is a waste of time, blah, blah, blah. My judgments can come in, my criticism comes in. Sometimes we start questioning, was this a good decision? Why did I think it was a good idea? How are people looking at me? Do I look right? Do I have the right clothes on? Just thinking. And of course, you can't just tell your brain quit thinking, because that's what it does. It's a thinker.
Yeah.
But I would say most men's misery in life comes from their thoughts. Not the actual experience they're having in life. Because you and I are sitting here right now in this nice, comfortable, air-conditioned studio, and we could have a wonderful time just enjoying each other's company. Or if we were thinking, I hope I do a good job on the interview. You're thinking, I hope this one, I know my wife said this before I left. Or, if we get into our thinkers, we're not going to enjoy this beautiful moment.
Yeah.
But that's what we do.
What keeps you in the moment personally? In your daily practice, what keeps you dropped in and in your body?
Little different practices I've developed along the way. Right now, where are your feet at?
Oh, yeah.
I love that phrase. Be where your feet are. And I took my shoes off before we sat down, and I can feel the carpet under my feet. And I always try to Just notice my feet. That's a good place to start. And then if you're where your feet are, okay, my feet are here. I guess I'll be here. And then from there, I'll notice breath. I'll notice my body. I'll notice my hunching, or I'll really come back to my frame and being grounded and solid. Breath is a big part of that. And then I'll just start noticing thought. Just kind of standing behind me, noticing what I'm experiencing, and without judgment. And I mean, that's easier said than done. But that whole being able to see myself, both physically, how am I, emotionally, how am I, mentally, what's the experience I'm having in the moment, and not judge it, that's liberating. Because it's usually the judgments tied into our thoughts that weigh on us.
Yeah. We were at breakfast, and you said something.
Oh, I said a bunch of things yesterday morning.
We said a lot of things at breakfast. But we were laughing.
I know every guy went home and told his wife everything.
we were laughing and having a good time. And you said something like, "This is why I like hanging out with dudes," or "This is why these conversations with men are so great."
I might have even messaged that to you after you dropped me back off. All my guy friends that know me, they all go, "Okay, Robert's going to say it. He's going to say it." And because I say, I love hanging out with guys.
Yeah.
I just love the energy of, you can say anything, you can tell each other the truth. If you go hang out with women, we straight guys, we don't. The golden rule of masculinity nowadays is don't do anything to piss off a woman. And so, whenever women are around, we're gauging what we say, okay, was that a little too off color? Is that going to get a frown? Is that going to get, a rebuke? And then, if there's women around that we think are kind of going back to how to attract them, if all of a sudden we're thinking, how can I make a good impression on her? Now all of a sudden we're worried about what I call the possibility of availability. Is she going to, want to hang out with me? But with the guys, it's kind of like, hey, even though we were making jokes about two of the guys there sleeping together, on a regular basis, apparently, we can make jokes about that, but we're not really worried. Is this going to influence the future willingness of the person at the table wanting to sleep with me?
Yeah.
Because it's just guys.
Right.
We're just having a good time. And I may have mentioned at breakfast that, as a species, men throughout all of history spent the majority of our time with guys. It's probably only been since World War II that men even spent very much time at all around women, and including their wives. Because, we went away to World War II. Women went into the factories to build the bombs and the airplanes and to be the nurses. The men finally came back from the war. Many of the women went back to be moms and mothers, but many didn't. And then, as things have progressed, and with feminism, the workplace is now more women than men, apparently. Men are kind of falling out of there. But now we have an environment, and I'm not saying it's good or bad, but where men are around women all the time. Mm-hmm. And we have this model with our wives that, like, our wives should be our best friends, and everything's 50-50, and everything's shared, the parenting, the household. And again, I'm not saying what's right or wrong. I'm just saying it's not the natural state of affairs for the evolution of human beings, and particularly in terms of human males. We always spent time with men, whether it's tribal time, we're out hunting, gathering, warring, doing, whatever the men did, coming back with, with the food, the furs, and the fucks to, bring that back to the women and get up and go do it the next day. Go back before World War II. If our fathers, worked away from the home, they went to the factory, they went to the office, they went to their job, mainly around men. Or if we're an agrarian society, out on the farm, with uncles, cousins, grandfathers, little boy, as soon as he can do something outside, he's outside with the men. And I just think that's woven into our DNA. And I think it's where we're the happiest, where we perform the best. And I think, going back to how do you attract women, I think it's one of the things that makes us most attractive to women.
This was going to be my next question.
Yeah. Honestly, the more time we spend with women, groups of women or a particular woman, the less attractive they find us. I don't know if it's the familiarity. I don't know if it's like that Pink song, "Go Away and Let Me Miss You." Every experience I've had is that the women in my life, when I go away, usually, they're sad, or I'm going to miss you, or blah, 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 or they get insecure or jealous or project what I might be doing. but they're also happy to see me when I get back.
Yeah.
And so it's that time away. It's the emotional tension that holds a relationship and makes it interesting. The best way I know to do it is moving together and coming apart. Moving together. If you and I hung out with each other all the fucking time, we'd get on each other's nerves and be wishing the other would go away. But somehow we think because we love our partner, that's not going to happen.
Right.
And I always ask people, I've been doing couples therapy for over 40 years, and I'd ask people, what would you rather have? Would you rather be together a bunch and keep looking for ways to get apart, or would you rather be apart and be looking for ways to get together?
Oh, yes.
And when we first met and we're dating, we were apart and we looked for ways to get together every way that we could. I remember, as an example of this, I had a guy in one of my men's groups that just came to mind several years ago. And he was a school teacher, and he met his then wife at school. She worked at the school as well. Now, I think he or she, one of them was married when they met each other. So they had one of those school affairs. Mm-hmm. And it was secret, and, every time they could get together, they were fucking in broom closets, any moment they were doing it. Okay. Fast forward a few years later, he's in this men's group, and he says, my wife and I, we've made an appointment for sex. I go, why the hell did you do that? Well, we just don't have time anymore, and there's this and there's that. And I said, was that the way it used to be? Did you have to make appointments? Yeah, I'll meet you in the broom closet. No, every chance they got, because they were apart looking for ways to get together. And so I told the guy, all right, what changed? Take a look at what changed. If now you're having to make appointments, put it on the calendar to have sex, what changed? You didn't used to have to do that. And he goes, well, my wife does like her daughter sleeping in the bed with us. I said, you might want to address that one, but that's a different issue. So the things that really fuel attraction when we first meet somebody, part of it is a little bit of the mystery, the not knowing when we're going to see them, if they're going to still like us as much the next time we're around them. And that creates a tension, an emotional tension and energy that is invigorating and exciting.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, most couples, their lives are defined by all the mundane tasks they do together. Whether it's whether it's cooking dinner, washing dishes, taking the garbage out, making sure the kids have their homework done, watching TV, cleaning house. Those are all great things. They all need to be done. But if that begins to define what the relationship is, that we do these boring, mundane, got-to-do things together, the relationship starts to feel boring, mundane. Yeah, we're together, but not particularly interesting.
In Front Row Dads, we have small groups. We call those bands. They're typically 4 to 8 guys. They meet regularly. Some of those groups work great. They've been together for years. They take trips together. The conversations are rich. They laugh. It's like the ideal brotherhood of these 4 to 8 guys. And other guys will get together in the groups and they'll just fall apart. They just don't work. When guys can't find the brotherhood, when they don't seem to have, and I know there's some guys that just seem to naturally have it, and there's some guys that don't, that skill of building brotherhood. How would you coach a man to be better at building brotherhood in his life?
I went through that myself, really. Well, probably been focusing on that for over 20 years now. But it seems like it kind of comes in waves where I feel like a stronger need, like, oh, okay, I need to put more effort into it. That's a good question, because I'm always curious, too, about why things work, why they don't. Why the exact same thing can work with one guy but not another guy. An example of that, when I started teaching guys how to date, when I got divorced in my late 40s and then into my 50s, I didn't know how to date. I hadn't done it since college. I sucked at it then. I used nice guy seduction. I'd try to impress the girl, do things for her, listen to her talk about her problems, try to be smart. And then, once I got a girlfriend, I'd stay with her forever. And so I had to learn to date. And I did. And I got good enough at it. I was going on a lot of dates and having sex and getting some girlfriends. And my clients said, Robert, teach us. What are you doing? I said, well, I'm not a dating coach. And they said, well, but you're having success. Teach us. And I'm a teacher. So I thought, okay. And I'm a relationship guy. So, That's what my training and experience is in, even though I don't always do relationships that well. I know about them. So I had to think about, okay, what's working that is helping me connect with women, attracting them, go on dates with them. They're like wanting to get naked on first and second dates with no push from me. What's happening here? I didn't know what planet I'd landed on. And so my guys are saying, teach us. So I put together, okay, I sat down, what's working here? What am I doing? And a lot of it just had to do with being a social animal, getting out and connecting with people in general. With no attachment to outcome. Wasn't trying to make anything happen, wasn't picking up, wasn't just hitting on the hottest women. I was just walking through open doors of social opportunity. So I put this together, and I did a weekend workshop. And then I taught it a few more times, put it in a class. It turned into a couple books. And these guys would come do these workshops with me, pay money, come spend, 2, 3 days, whatever. And I check with them later. They check in with me, and they say, Robert, this stuff's really working. I'm going on a lot of dates, or I met this really amazing woman. This is great. It works. And then I would talk to other guys and say, how's it going? How's it working for you? Well, I haven't been on any dates. And I go, how come? Well, I just haven't been doing the stuff you teach. And so in my mind, I'm going, well, how come? You say you want a date, you want a girlfriend, you want to have sex, you pay money, you go to a workshop, and then you don't do it. And what really, probably a couple of things came down to it for me as I started looking at it. I think one is a fear of success, that this stuff works. And the problem is, what then? What's next that maybe I can't handle, or I lose control of my life, or this bad thing happens to me. Part of it's that, and then maybe part of it is men in general's discomfort with vulnerability, with taking risk. And so I think that's what you might see in these groups is some combination of a fear of success. They don't know what it's like to be in a band of brothers. They've never been there, never done it. They don't know what it might demand of them, what it might require of them, how it might take over their life or change their life. And that's scary.
Like if they were really, really good friends with somebody, that person would want more of them and they don't even know how to give more of them? Is that what you mean by fear of success?
Yeah, it could be so many things. Let's say we got 8 or 10 guys in a workshop. And I'll go, okay, what are all the things that can go wrong if you talk to a pretty woman? And, we'll just go around the room. And you can come up with 20 plus things. All the way to the beginning, you might get rejected, might look foolish, you might have a boyfriend that beats you up, you might get a drink thrown in your face. All the way to she does like you, she does become your girlfriend, she becomes a psycho bitch from hell, she makes your life miserable, you can't get away, or, you have 2 kids with her, and then she has an affair with an artist and, takes you for all your work. I mean, there's so many things that can go wrong if you talk to a pretty woman. And if any of those things possibly could go wrong, it makes sense to not do the behavior that might lead to that thing happening, right. That success. And the same thing is true, I'll do the same thing with a group of guys and say, what's everything that might go wrong if you try to put your penis in a vagina? Oh, you might not get your erection, you might lose it, you might come too quickly, you might get an STD, you might get her pregnant, you might get accused of rape, you might get written up on social media, you might. And if there's a chance of any of those things happening, it would make sense to not do the things that would lead to success. Same thing's true, in business, whether it's, going for a promotion or job you want, launching your own company. Everything that is outside of our comfort zone, that's not already familiar to us, is filled with unknowns. Mm. And most of us will fill in the gaps of what are those unknowns based on our life experience, so our world paradigm, our occurring world of us and the world. And it usually, for most people, boils down to, I'll be found out, people will see, I'm boring, uninteresting, I waste a lot of time looking at porn, jerking off, so I'll be found out. There's inadequacies get tied in there. Well, they'll find out I'm not good enough, I'm not that smart, I really don't have that much money, I'm kind of faking it, I'm in debt up to my eyeballs. I'll lose control of my life. I'll lose my freedom. I won't be able to goof off, do what I want. I'll be obligated now. There'll be a brighter spotlight on me somewhere. All my successes, now I've got to keep achieving greater successes because of the spotlight. So, there's a handful of things that I found most men have in their bag of what might happen if I succeed. Mm. And that's just fear of success. There's also, the fear of failures. I might look foolish, might look stupid, I might lose all my money, whatever the negatives are as well. So I think you can break down any context where you have any situation where some people follow certain patterns or behaviors, take advantage of certain opportunities, and they have success. And then you look at other people given the same information, same opportunities, and nothing happens for them. It's usually probably either a conscious or an unconscious choice to not do the things that work. And, we talk quite a bit now about kind of the epidemic of loneliness and isolation for men. And it's true. I mean, there's all kinds of statistics showing men, marry at a much later age, spend much less part of their lives in relationship, having a lot less sex, which is kind of amazing because theoretically sex should be easier to have now than it used to be. And I think this kind of pandemic of loneliness, I believe a lot of it's self-inflicted. It's just men feeling overwhelmed, not knowing how to connect, not knowing how to get out of their comfort zone, never had been any kind of masculine initiation to go do things that make them uncomfortable, that they're afraid of. And so I think it's just men nowadays, we're drawn to the comfort. Just let me just stay, I call it the nursery. Let me just stay in the nursery. I can just consume information. I mean, we love consuming information. Listen to you guys at breakfast yesterday morning. They go, oh man, you guys go to a lot of self-help workshops. And sometimes I have to give my clients, I said, stop reading self-help books, watching podcasts, listening to the ebooks.
Except for this one.
No, finish my course. Yeah, you're taking
do
a
his
course with me. Finish
do his
my
event,
course. Yeah.
listen to the show.
Yeah.
Everything else you can let it go.
I tell them, you probably already have enough information to significantly change your life.
Sure.
But gathering information is fun. And we live in a world, I mean, I look at millennials. My son's 39, so he's a millennial. He grew up with the internet, with broadband internet, with Discovery Channel, Animal Planet. And my son can talk intelligently about many things. He has a master's in wildlife ecology, but he's well informed. And now we look at Generation Z. Their mom and dads were putting a smartphone in their hands when they're 3 days old to entertain them with Nickelodeon or whatever. And so they've just grown up with a phone in their face consuming information, for good or for bad. I mean, there's good information out there and a lot of crappy information. But they're consumers of information. And they may have big plans to launch their entrepreneurial project and build their click funnel and do all of that because they have all the information to do it, but they never get around to it. Oh, there's one more podcast I can watch, or, I could go, study more about ayahuasca, or I can go, and so they hang out in the nursery, just getting information pushed to them, whether it's surfing the internet, on social media, jerking off to porn, watching Netflix, all of those things, they're fine. They're not inherently bad or evil. But once we get comfortable with just having information pushed to us and no real challenge required of us, because, it's a lot easier to gather information than it is to actually go act on it. So I think that's what you will see with a lot of men nowadays is that, it seemed like a good idea, but it required something of them. A challenge of them. And again, most modern men have not had any kind of masculine initiation where they were taught that to welcome the challenge, to get comfortable feeling uncomfortable, to face their fears. And I think we need that to be happy as men, to really live up to our potential. So going back to your question of your men's groups, it could be a number of things. It just could be the chemistry of the group. Every time you go to one of these new workshops, right, you go and you probably watch yourself kind of analyzing and evaluating all the other guys. I'll do workshops in my home. I did one just weekend before last. I'll do another one in about 3 weeks. Usually about 8 guys. I had 10 last time. And I tell them Friday night, I said, you're going to be looking around thinking, all right, who are these guys? I don't know about that guy. He reminds me of someone I know. I'll probably got to like him. I wish that guy hadn't come. He's probably going to dominate. That guy's weird. We all do that. We do. We size everybody up. We measure everybody. We create the hierarchies. And I tell the guys, that's normal. And I said, right now you don't know each other. You might even think a few people in here are kind of strange. I said, but by Sunday afternoon, after you spend time being vulnerable, going deep, spending some time socializing outside of this space, sharing who you are, by Sunday, you guys are going to feel like you are frat brothers. You've known each other 20 years. And so I've been following on the Signal chat thread. These guys were in the workshop a week ago. And they've already organized. They're all getting together to talk on Zoom this weekend. They've been texting each other, talking about their travels. I didn't have to tell them to do any of that. They're just doing it. And I've watched that happen. I've led groups where afterwards, for years, 5, 6 years, the men travel every year to go be together, do some event, connect. So some groups do that, some don't. And so I think part of it is the container you create to where the men feel safe to be vulnerable, to open up, to reveal, to be their true selves. How many places in life do we just get to be our true self?
Yeah.
I mean, we're measured in so many places. We're guarded. And to be yourself is what bonds us and connects us with other people. It's what I tell guys around dating. Be yourself. Well, I might be my real self, but that's not working so well. I don't have a girlfriend. And I go, how many people have you really let see the real you? Do you even see the real you? Do you see how much time you waste, how insecure you are, all the opportunities you squander? And that's not judgment, but do you blurt what's on your mind? Do you act on an impulse? Do you have a spontaneity that it's just you? And most men don't. But once they get that experience of having that with somebody else, that they feel safe in this reciprocal, we want more of that. Now, again, a lot of us are busy. We've got our partners. You would not believe how many men basically have to get a hall pass or permission from their wife just to leave the house and go have a breakfast with other guys. When I joined my first men's group 20 plus years ago, met every Saturday morning, and the guys all went and had breakfast together after the group. And I had to drive about 45 minutes to get to it. And, at least for a year and a half, never went to breakfast. It was Saturday, I had to get home to my wife. I didn't know what her expectations were, what kind of mood she was going to be in. I had to get home. It took me about a year and a half of going to that men's group to go, I'm going to breakfast with you guys. And I go, this is cool. And then, once I realized how much fun it is, let's go camping together. And once I got a taste of it, that runs my life now. I've got, been in a men's program myself for years. I'm the guy that, holds everybody together, gets in touch. Here in Austin this week, I got several buddies here I'm already in connection with. One of them already arranged a peyote ceremony that other friends of mine are going to be at. So everywhere I go in the world, I've got friends now. But most of the friends will say, Robert, you're the one that kind of, makes things happen. You're the one that stays in contact. Because we men, we just get busy.
Yeah.
We let things slide.
Do you feel that's friends. A part of it, what you just said, is that there's got to be at least one guy that's the spark?
Probably.
He's got to be driving it. He has to bring the fuel.
Or at least two guys that
want, and then everybody else gets around that.
Yeah.
They need a nucleus, right?
Somebody has to, I mentioned these groups, the workshops that I lead, and I create a Signal chat thread for them. And usually about after 2 or 3 weeks, I drop out of it. And, but what I do is I go, what guy, because I have to leave somebody as the administrator of it. So I just look, which guy's the guy's that's been blowing it up? Yep. The one saying, let's do this, let's talk. I make him the administrator. So if no one guy like that stands out, there's usually probably not much going to happen either. So there does almost need to be somebody that just says, let's do this, let's do that, or somebody that's leading with their vulnerability, or even saying, hey, I got home, my wife said she, wants to leave me, that my whole world's falling apart. But even that can be the glue that brings the guys together, because there's this vulnerability and they want to be there for each other. So it's not like you have to have a cheerleader that's, always setting up fun stuff to do, but there has to be something that the guys just get some sense of value that they want to stay apart and stay connected.
Where does nice guy syndrome and boundaries actually play a role in men having relationship with other men? Because I've only ever discussed boundaries as it relates to my wife or my children. I've only ever discussed being a nice guy as it relates to my wife or dating or attracting women.
Okay.
But I've never looked at the lens of where do my nice guy tendencies actually hurt my ability to be in a brotherhood, to be in the band, or a lack of boundaries would prevent me from either leaning into that group or having success within that group. So I don't know, man.
Is that a question?
Endlessly?
Is that a question?
The question is, how does that
How do
play?
boundaries show up between men and men?
Yes. No, between men and men. Like
Men and men, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that is a good question. Boundaries, they're an interesting animal. So let's talk about boundaries.
Yeah.
And if I veer off from that question, bring me back to it. Okay. If I have a Biden moment, forget where I am and what I'm talking about. All right. So I did not learn about boundaries until I was in my 30s, in my second marriage, and I already had a PhD in marriage and family therapy. I'd never heard of boundaries. And I went to a therapist, it was a woman therapist, and very first session with her, she said, let's talk about boundaries. And I don't know if she did that with like every client in her first session, or if she could just tell, this guy needs the boundary talk. So we were meeting in her house, and she had this big space and kind of a basement area, and she put a big string on the ground as a line. And she said, you stand on that side, I'm gonna stand on this side. That's your boundary. That's where that's your space, this is my space. She said, I'm gonna come into your space. I'm gonna step over your boundaries. I'm gonna put my hands on your shoulders. I'm gonna push you backwards. Stop me when you begin to feel uncomfortable. And probably everything she said probably had exact, precise meaning to it. Like, stop me when you begin to feel uncomfortable. She didn't say, tell me to stop. And she said, stop me. And so I'm going, okay. I had no clue where this is going or what we were doing. So here's a line on the ground, and I stand probably 2 feet, 2 steps behind the line, because I didn't know what a boundary was, or that it's my job to assert my boundaries and be at my boundaries and enforce my boundaries. I didn't know all that stuff yet. It's just a string on the ground. So I'm back about 2 feet because I'm a nice guy. Why would I get right up on the string? That's kind of aggressive. That's not very nice. I should let her, cross the line. I didn't think all that, but that practice demonstrated what was in my nervous system. So she comes across, and like I said, she's a few years older than me. Not a very big woman, Mormon, religious person, so not a big aggressive person. Puts her hands on my shoulders and starts pushing me back. And I start backpedaling a little bit, and I say, okay, stop. Well, she kept pushing. I go, stop. And she kept pushing, and I'm getting closer to the wall behind me. And my junior high school football training came in, got down into linebackers, stance, got solid, got like this. And I stopped her. I stopped us from moving any further. And she got this big smile on her face, like, yeah, you're kind of like, that's it. That's what I was supposed to do. That's the prize. But in terms of nice guys, most nice guys, because we want the peace, we'll go along to get along. We don't want to upset anybody. We don't want anybody mad at us. We don't want anybody to leave us. We don't want anybody to shame us. So we try to, finesse every situation to try to make sure it goes okay and nobody gets upset. Nobody gets mad at us or hurt or angry with us. And going back to the attraction thing, in terms of a man doing that, it makes him highly unattractive to women. My second wife, who I was married to when I started doing my own work, my nice guy work, and whom I was married to when I wrote No More Mr. Nice Guy, she used to say to me, she said, if you can't stand up to me, how will I ever know you can stand up for me?
Ooh.
I thought, well, I got it. And then she'd say, I'm just a little girl making noise. And when I see you get all panicky and like, oh, I got to make it better, I got to fix it, she goes, that doesn't feel good and it doesn't turn me on. And she was right about those things. If a woman is a security-seeking creature, looks to the man in her life to be the security system, she can probably, buy her own car, pay her own bills, call the police, get her own security system. But for emotional, if she sees a guy can't stand up to her and can't stand up to his mother and can't stand up to his buddies or his boss, that's not a turn on, not a turn on. So this whole thing about boundaries, I say that they allow people to get close to us. And another fundamental part about it is that boundaries are not about getting someone else to be different. They're about getting us to be different.